Hey everyone, today I'm going to share with you my book talk on the fiction story The Name Jar, written and illustrated by Yang Suk Choi. So, to start out, we're just going to go on a picture walk. So you start out with Eunhae looking at the school bus window on her way to her first day at her new school. Her and her family have just moved here from Korea, so she's nervous and excited all at the same time. She is remembering before they left when she was saying goodbye to her grandmother. Her grandmother gave her a stamp with the Korean symbols for her name on it. So she was fidgeting with that stamp on the bus, and some of the kids saw it and asked her what her name was, and she says, "My name is Eunhae," and they can't really pronounce her name, and they're saying it wrong, and it just upsets her. And now that she's worried that the American kids aren't going to like her because she's different and her name is different. So she gets to school, and she's standing outside her classroom, nervously waiting to go in. And a little boy walks up and was like, "Well, aren't you going to go in?" And basically drags her in the classroom with him. So the teacher introduces her as the new student and tells her to tell the class her name. And she says, well, I haven't picked one yet. I'll let y'all know by the end of the week. So they're all like, "What? Why doesn't she have a name?" So then Eunhae gets home and her mom's giving her, all asking her all the questions about her first day. How did it go? Did you make any new friends? And she's like, "Yeah, it was good." And then she just kind of throws in there, "I think I want my own American name." And her mom's like, "What? You want your own American name?" But Eunhae's a beautiful name. Your grandmother and I went to a name master to pick it out for you. It makes you special. And she's like, "But it's so hard to pronounce and it's different." And she was like, "Well," her mom's like, "It's good to be different. You are different." But that's not what she wanted to hear. So later that day, they go out to town to go get some groceries, and she sees all these stores that she doesn't recognize, and she's feeling really out of place. But then she sees Kim's Market, and under it, it has Kim's Market in Korean, so that makes her feel more at home. So they go in there and pick out some Korean food, which again makes her feel more at home after the day she had. So she meets Mr. Kim and tells him her name, and he tells her how beautiful that is and that he knows that Eunhae also means grace. And she's like, "Yeah, it does," and tells the story of how her mom and grandmother picked it out. So then she's in the bathroom mirror at home practicing all her American names, Amanda, Laura, going through them all, and none of them really fit and none of them stick. They don't sound right, they don't feel right. So then she gets to school the next day, and there's a jar on her desk with all these papers in it, and she draws one of them out, and it says Daisy on it. So then all of her fellow students explain that they want to help her pick her name since, as to them, she doesn't have a name. So she agrees to let them help pick her name, and that's where the name jar is born. So then, after class, she's sitting at her desk playing with a stamp her grandmother gave her. And the curly headed boy that drug her in the classroom walks up and he introduces himself as Joey. And he's like, "Well, don't you have a name?" And she said, "Well, I can just show you my name." So she shows him the stamp and he loves it. And she lets him keep the paper. And they leave the class together. And the next day, there's just more names in the jar, and everybody wants Eunhae to pick the name that they put in there. And then she gets home that day, and a letter from her grandmother is there, and it makes her miss her even more. So she fills up a whole paper full of stamps just to remind her of her grandmother. Then they go back to Mr. Kim's Market, and she's talking to Mr. Kim, and he calls her by her name, Eunhae, and Joey just happens to be in there. And he's like, "That's your name." And she's like, "Oh, yeah, that's my name." And teaches him the right way to say it eventually and the meaning behind it. And it was just really special for her that he took the time to learn to say her name right and appreciated it. So then she gets to school the next day, and it's just frantic. Everyone's in a panic looking for the book. For the name jar because it is missing. So she walks over to her desk where the name jar used to be, and all that's there is a single piece of paper. So she just swipes it up, puts it in her pocket. So when the teacher gets there, they're all like, the name jar's gone. And he's like, well, did you get a chance to look through all the names? And she's like, yeah, I did. I'm ready to introduce myself. So Eunhae walks up to the board and writes her real name, Eunhae, in English and in Korean, and teaches the whole class the right way to say her name and the meaning behind it. And eventually they all learn to say it right, and she realizes that she can have friends and people will like her, even though she's different and her name is different. So then she goes home, and she's upstairs, and her mom's like, Eunhae, come down, your friend's here. So she goes downstairs, and it's Joey, and he has the name jar with all the names in it. And she's like, oh my gosh, you found it? And he's like, well, actually, I was the one that stole it. And he tells her how happy that she is that he is that she picked her real name, and she agrees to let the name jar go back to class and empty this time, and she's going to fill it with Korean nicknames for all of her students. And then Joey tells her that Mr. Kim gave Joey a nickname in Korean, and he puts the stamp that Mr. Kim gave her on the paper, and she's like, oh, I know what that means. That's Chinku. That means friend. So they become friends at the end, and she learns that people will like her even though she's different. The illustrations in this book, they look like they've been paint. They look like paint to me. Here we go. Here's one. And she does a really good job of illustrating the emotions, but they just appear to have been painted to me. They're really big and colorful. I love when picture books, the pictures take up the entire page. It's not just like a little frame with a picture. These are my favorite kind, when the words are just right there in the whole picture. One lesson that I would really like to do with this book is I would like to let students research their names. Just find the meaning, the language or country of origin, all the alternate spellings, the history of their name. And there's a website that you can go to that shows like the popularity ranking of your name, so they can find out like how popular their name is. And then just any other fun facts they can find about their names, because everyone's name is special. Eunhae comes to learn that her name is special, and everyone's name is special and different and comes from somewhere. And then a way that I would adapt that lesson for gifted students is, in addition to researching their name and finding the history of their name, is I would let them write a story of how they think their name came to be. The first person that ever had their name, write a story about them and how you think that they got that name. So that is all that I have to say on the book The Name Jar. I think it's a great book. It would be a great addition in any library. I hope to have it in my classroom library one day. I just think it's a great book. Thank you for listening to my book talk.